Peace. We're going to do a little something different today. Happy Pretty Tony Day, February 10th. It's International Pretty Tony Day. That means you got to do a good deed on the strength of him. Outside of what good deed you need to do for yourself. We on chapter 12, the economic order and power. Economic powerlessness means political powerlessness. The idea that the African American community can exercise effective power, political or otherwise, without simultaneously exercising economic power is a fantasy. The election of blacks to high office, even to the highest office, and their plenteous appointments to various courts, powerful directorates, boards, commissions, heads of multinational corporations, powerful regulatory agencies, and the like, will do relatively little to enhance the power of the African American community or release it from its subordinate relationship to the white American community. Neither will it measurably increase the probability of its future survival. For while hundreds of African Americans may be fortunate enough to attain positions of influence and affluence in America, millions of average African Americans are marginalized and impoverished simultaneously. Ultimately, the power of office reflects the power of the constituency it represents and which supports it. As long as the African American community is relatively weak, so will be its representatives, no matter how high their offices. Ultimately, the power of office reflects the power of the constituency it represents and which it supports. As long as the African American community is relatively weak, so will its representatives, no matter how high their offices. And this community will remain relatively weak as long as it remains in relative economic disorder and will not amass and effectively utilize significant wealth. The greater power and influence of Jewish Americans, the growing power and influence of Korean Americans in Los Angeles and New York City, and other ethnic minorities in America, despite their relatively small populations and national voting numbers compared to the much larger population and voting populations of the African American community, clearly indicate that power and influence are born effective social organization. And let me read that again, y'all. My bad. The greater power and influence of Jewish Americans. Yo, I be stuttering, but I guess that's just Pretty Tony telling me I still got a lot to learn, which I already know. I need to humble myself a lot more, and I just got a lot more to learn. We all do, but you know, for me, for sure. The great power and influence of Jewish Americans, the growing power and influence of Korean Americans in Los Angeles and New York City, and other ethnic minorities in America, despite their relatively small populations, like the Burmese in Buffalo, New York, or the Ukrainians in Buffalo, New York, or the Russians in Buffalo, New York, etc. And other ethnic minorities in America, despite their relatively small populations and national voting numbers compared to the much larger population and voting populations of the African American community, clearly indicate that power and influence are born of effective social organization and the effective use of organized wealth compared to that of ineffective social organization, unorganized wealth, and sheer population size. In prior chapters, we discussed various forms of power, e.g., coercive power, physical force, authority, as well as various bases of power. Control over important economic resources and the ability to make economic decisions which significantly impact on the lives of others permit those who own or control these resources to build a considerable amount of power. Thomas Dye cogently describes the relationship between power and economic resources in the United States. And it is as follows. A great deal of power in America is centered in large economic organizations, corporations, banks, utilities, investment firms, and government agencies charged with the responsibility of overseeing the economy. Control of economic resources provides a continuous and important base of power in any society. Economic organizations decide the basic economic question of who gets what. Deciding who gets what entails deciding what will be produced, how it will be produced, how much will be produced, and how much it will cost, how many people will be employed, who will be employed, and what their wages will be, how the goods and services that are produced will be distributed, what technology will be developed, what profits will be made, and how will they get distributed, how much money will be available for loans and what interest rates will be charged, how fast the earnings will grow, and so forth. Dye goes on to define the economic system as consisting of the institutions and processes by which a society produces and distributes scarce resources. Institutions and processes by which a society produces and distributes scarce resources. He adds that where resources are scarce, some scheme. He adds that where resources are scarce, some scheme must be created to decide who gets what. At this time, the African American community has not appropriately addressed and resolved the problem of economic scarcity which prevails within it. This problem distorts all of its social and personal relations, social institutions, and general well-being, as well as weakens its power relations with other ethnic communities. If the African American community is to maximize its political economic power, then it must maximize its wealth through the organization of an economic system by which it can acquire, produce, and distribute economic resources in such ways as to provide for its own needs and can use them in pursuit of its own political interest in the nation and the world. The maximization of the economic power of the African American community in particular and the worldwide Pan-African community in general requires that we realistically appraise the economic structures of those communities and the nature of their economic relations with European and other ethnic national and international communities. Given the relatively poor economic conditions which adhere across the African diaspora and the correlated powerlessness which they generate, the full economic empowerment of African communities everywhere requires that their internal structural dynamics and external relations be radically transformed. The limited scope of our volume explicitly prohibits us from dealing with the issues raised in the prior paragraph with the great descriptive and prescriptive detail such an undertaking necessitates. However, we strive to provide broad conceptual frameworks which render us a sound working approach to economically and politically empower the African American community. We reason that by conceptually looking at the African American community as a colony, a nation within a nation, along with viewing African nations and large African populations and predominantly non-African nations as neo-colonial nation states and nations within nations respectively, we can both more simply and productively describe their current poor economic circumstances and powerlessness as well as prescribe for their remediation. Next time, it'll be the African American community as a colony. Talk that talk. Hey, whether you celebrate Valentine's Day or anti-Valentine's Day, always do what you can for those that you love. Y'all know that I make that unique. Yeah, I'm still sporting that Bills. Yeah, I'm a Buffalo Bills supporter in the sense of I bet on them. I ain't really been to any games. I haven't bought a jersey. I do have a jersey, but you got to do something in your downtime. You can't crush on everything like it's your enemy and it's your opposition. You can, but you have to know balance. That's why my art is needed and necessary. But I'm gonna show you a couple of pieces that I made. Some pearl and some tiger eye, nice beautiful necklace, and a nice bling choker. And you can adjust it too. So if you want it to be a little shorter, we could adjust it too. Hold on one second. Yeah. Yep. Hey. Yeah. Well, I'm speaking because I don't want to get flack for any of the music in the back. Yeah, I'm saying. But I appreciate it. Y'all have a great day. Peace. I hope your today is great. And may your tomorrow be greater. Peace. Stop.